Welcome to Permission to Shine, the space where high-achieving women like you come to peel back the layers, overcome what's been holding you back, and rise into your most authentic, powerful self. I'm your host, Sharice Bisram, inner power activation leader and intuitive healer, and a woman who knows what it means to look like she's thriving on the outside, also while feeling disconnected on the inside. This podcast is here to remind you, you didn't come here to just perform, you came here to lead with your soul. Your obstacles, they're invitations to expand. And your power, it was never outside of you. It's been waiting within you all along. Each week we'll dive into honest conversations, healing insight and soul-led strategies to help you stop self-sabotaging, reclaim your light and lead your life, your business and your relationships from deep-rooted truth. So if you're ready to rise with grace, softness and fire, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a very brand new series. And I have another fabulous international guest. I have Salvatore Manzani.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I should have gave you that cue that you can introduce yourself now, but it keeps it all fun and engaging for the listeners. So could you please tell everyone, well, who you are, what you do, and why?
Wonderful. It's a delight to be here with you. And my name is Salvatore. I am a communications coach. I work with leaders who are wanting to create more clarity and impact with their messaging. I work with a lot of data-driven analysts, scientific leaders who need to take complex terms and ideas and turn them into something that people can relate to and even get inspired by. So background is that I've been doing this for about 20 years. I grew up in the communications world. My father was a public speaker and he would come back. He'd be so lit up from every one of his events. I was like, I want to do that. So when I got to college, I jumped on the stages, found I didn't really desire the spotlight so much, but I learned how to turn my somewhat introversion into a tool to supporting other people who want to get up on stages and lifting them up. So created a whole series of techniques around frameworks for your content, techniques for delivery, and strategies for how to show up with presence in the situation, especially high stakes situations.
I love that so much. And I think what's really beautiful that you highlighted there is the fact that you felt like being in the spotlight wasn't for you. So you utilized your strengths that you had and yeah, used it. And I feel like for me, that's everything that I talk about is this kind of alchemy moment where we take, maybe in my case, like I call it pain to power, but in your case, it was like, okay, I'm naturally introverted, but I understand so much about this space. How do I utilize my strengths and make a business, a career, but even just, I guess, everyday life choices that we could use that just same notion of tuning into ourselves and thinking, actually, do I like this? And that's a question that we just don't ask ourselves enough, right? So thank you for leading with that. I think that's really, really powerful. So I'd
It's
love for you to kind of explain in a bit more detail, really, the type of work that you do. And especially you did something recently with women. So I feel like that would be really interesting for you to dive into.
Yes, my what I realized when I was becoming a public speaker was that most tools for public speaking are geared towards extroverts. It's not geared towards the people who don't necessarily feel they have a seat at the table or don't naturally express their voice. Like we're not just shaping charisma or charm, we are actually having to learn a whole new series. So I dove into the psychology and neuroscience of communication. And now I work to empower the people who don't always feel heard in the meetings. If you ever left a meeting and said, "Oh, I wish I'd said this," or "I said it first and then somebody else got credit for it," which happens a lot for women, or I my idea just didn't seem to like drive forward with the impact that I wanted. Like I've created strategies to help align your message with a framework that will help it land. And specifically, I work with a lot with female leaders, a lot in the finance realm, which is a male-dominated realm, in terms of how to show up, how to support other female leaders, and how to appear with presence and gravitas. Because let's be honest, women have to thread a very difficult needle, right? They can't appear too cold, they can't appear too quick. There's just so many can'ts, like how to show up with presence in a room that's got a lot of alpha masculine energy and still drive forward their message. It requires work. So for the last 20 years, I've been working with executives across the spectrum, but I do seem to lean more and more often towards women and showing up and claiming their space in those areas.
Yes, I love that so much. And obviously, my listeners will know that that is all what I do, and I'm so passionate about it. But it's such a interesting conversation to be thinking about that from a communication perspective. And I think that a lot of women might never, not ever have thought that, the way that you deliver something using your voice is where the power is. Because, like we said, sometimes we believe that in order to be seen and respected that we have to have like a loud tone to be understood, and that then sometimes makes us feel very masculine and not like our true selves. And unfortunately, as we know, the corporate world, like you said, is male dominated. So a lot of the successful women that I've met have almost shaped themselves to being more masculine in order to be seen and heard, and then realizing now after 20 years or so that it's actually had a real detrimental effect on their nervous system and their body, and the stress and the burnout, and they actually end up quitting the work and doing something else completely. And I think the bridge that we both have in this together is that I think it's that female, that divine feminine leadership space. It's about being who you are, not trying to shape yourself into how the masculine perspective does it, but utilizing what your natural strengths and abilities are and showcasing that and stepping forward into that light. And I'd love for you to dive in a little bit more on how that looks in your world, and maybe some of the steps you kind of take your clients through. I think would be a real lovely way to tie this together.
Definitely. And I like double clicking on what you said that we often fake it till we make it as an idea. We go in with this idea that I have to be performative and I have to show up a certain way. And that is exhausting. It is just simply exhausting. And if we don't have time to recharge or a space to be ourselves, then it will burn out. We will burn out very quickly. What I like to offer a lot of the female executives that I'm working with is the sense of presence is on a continuum from high agency, where I'm the sovereign. I am the sovereign looking out over my queendom or kingdom, whichever you want to call it, the sovereign space, high agency, all the way to the high relational space where I'm not the sovereign, I'm more of the greeter, the ambassador, or even the jester in the room. I'm creating space from the principal of the school to the kindergarten teacher, right? From the CEO to the first impression ambassador who's making everybody feel welcome. Like there's a continuum on this spectrum around the way we show up and our presence. And there's behaviors associated with all of them. And what I would offer is that we have all been taught how to behave. We know how to behave in certain situations. Life, society, family, friends condition us to know how to behave in a particular setting and context. That conditioning is not always appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish. So, as much as I just got on a rampage about being oneself and not fake it till you make it, oftentimes we have to lean into and lead from parts of ourselves that don't feel fully authentic because we've been conditioned to play it small. We've been conditioned not to show up with that voice or conditioned not to show up with that kind of personality or whatever. And we want to think about first, what is the context of the situation and what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Then, how do I show up with presence to meet that moment. Again, my instinct, my intuition may not be aligned with what's needed in there. And I'll break it down into three simple categories: space, stillness, silence. The higher on the agency scale that a person is wanting to convey, the more space they take up, the more stillness they demonstrate, and the more comfortable they are with silence. The other end of the spectrum is going to be like making myself small. It's going to be using more gestures, hands close to the face, using a lot of words. I'm not comfortable with silence. I don't want silence. I want you to be talking. I feel uncomfortable with that. So finding the spectrum and being aware of our own behaviors, where we line up. And then the hardest part of this is becoming aware of the triggers. What is it contextually that triggers a behavioral response that we've been conditioned to have? Now, as women walk into a male-dominated boardroom, there's often a lot of thoughts that will come up into how I need to behave, perhaps because of the person that's there, because of the topic, because of whatever. Identify what are the triggers that evoke a certain behavior along this spectrum, and then you can become aware of which one do I want to choose to relate in that one. How is this landing so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a nodding dog in the background there, and people can't see me because it's the sound, but I'm nodding away because you are speaking my language. And yeah, everything you said about taking up space, and even down to, I think, pushing against our comfort zone. And like I always speak about as well, that our subconscious is wired for safety, which is familiar to what we're used to and brought up in, as opposed to that successful mindset that we need to adopt really in order to grow to where we want to be. And I guess, in so many words, you're kind of saying it's pushing ourselves to our edges without stepping over the line of performing. It's like getting to that point where, okay, it's a little bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but the more we do it, the more it becomes more natural. And I love the example that you gave when you slowed right down and then you were talking about space. And that is so important because in my whole life, actually, lots of women that I've met, and probably me at times, a long time ago now, would have tried to fill the silence. And a few times with some friends, I've said to them, it's okay to just have silence in the gaps. We
Mhm.
don't need to fill it. And yeah, I think that's such a powerful space to be in. And just, yeah, everything you said there, especially self-awareness, like that for me, I believe is the key to success, happiness, joy, fulfillment. All of the beautiful things come from that self-awareness space. Because as you said, when you can identify where you sit on the spectrum, you then are tuned into the trigger, why it's coming up, what has brought that to the surface. So then from there, you can start to implement some changes or even just sit with it, which again, we've said about the beauty of space and silence, right? So yes, absolutely love that. I did notice as you were speaking, you mentioned about these archetypes. You said about the jester, sorry, and two other ones. I'd love for you to go into more detail on that because that really sparked my interest. I was like, oh, say more.
It's for me, when I consider the spectrum from agency to relational, I need to have an idea of what are those archetypes that I'm going. So it's from the sovereign to the jester, from the principal to the kindergarten teacher, from the CEO to the welcome ambassador at the office. And when you picture those archetypes, you can already imagine what their behaviors are. How are they using their voice? How are they using their space? How are they using their body in those spaces? To your point, there is a great deal of value in noticing where our set point is, where is our neutral, and becoming aware of what are our triggers, what causes us to revert to or make ourselves small in a situation, or where do we feel like we have to be big and it feels performative. Becoming aware of those is the first step because in the gap, Victor has that amazing quote, between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And in that gap, we have an opportunity to choose our response rather than react. When we start to notice what the trigger is and what our response is, we can start to choose a different path. What I would offer is this, just anybody listening right now, next opportunity you have in a meeting or a connection with somebody, see what it feels like to take up more space. Spread your stuff out on the table in front of you, or have your arms wider, your feet a little wider than normal. Don't cross up. Like lift the chest up and keep your chin high and see how that feels, even as you're talking. Then see what you do with your voice. A lot when it comes to the voice, and I've worked with vocal teachers and coaches that are phenomenal, and I can teach those tools. And I'm not an actor, and I don't claim to be an actor, but that is there's a gift to spending time on how we use our voice. The voice either comes from the head, or it comes from the throat, or it comes from the body. And when it comes from the body, it's an embodied voice. It's literally coming and it resonates throughout. And when people hear it, they feel it first and then they hear it and they can process the words. When I want to communicate a deep, important fact, I need an embodied voice. And the thing that I find a lot of people do is they will end with an up. They'll have a sentence and they'll end up, and they'll continually end up as they're talking, and they'll keep dragging. And it's a both and, because in the one hand, it's a tick to try to keep our audience engaged. We want you to know that we're not done talking and there's something coming after this, but it doesn't give our listeners a chance to breathe and pause. Practice two things. One is taking up more space, and two, see if you can end your sentence down. Practice saying that same sentence and coming down at the end. And it's a pitch as well as your tone. It's a whole thing, but practice coming to a finality, a period. Come down to a period at the end of your sentence just to see how that feels. So that's two things. One, taking up space. Second, coming down with your voice at the end of it, noting what part of your body your voice is projecting from. I feel like I'm doing a big download. I hope you're okay with this, Sharice.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I also do some speaker training. So you're just, yeah, you're giving it, you're speaking the same rhetoric, which I love, in your own way. And that's really what I have. It's a beautiful golden thread between my guests and myself, is that we're all saying something very similar in our own way. And I hope that for the listeners, again, this is just that reminder of how much power you have within yourself to be able to really get across what you need to say and share with the world. And everything I do is about this embodiment piece. So when you were saying about speaking from the soul, like that is one of the things that I'm like trying to teach all of the time, especially when it comes to delivering in person. We're at an event and you've got something really important to share. I can feel as soon as someone drops into that body soul space. And I talk about using the different chakras as well for that, like when we're talking about especially because obviously my work sort of tethers into sort of spirituality, connection, soul self type of work, that when it's something deep and meaningful that you really want everyone to feel, it's like really talking from that root chakra, that grounded space, that's your knowing, that's who you are, and you're here to take up that space and share it. So yeah, I loved all of that. And even down to parenting as well, when you were saying about going up on the end, if you talk with that going up on the end, your children don't always believe you as much as if you put it down. And I've noticed that with my nieces, that their mum does that naturally, or she shouts just like that. And for me, I say to her, you have to do the firm voice. You have to do the firm, low voice. And that's why they listen. And funny enough, my stepdad and I have that ability to tap into that lower voice. My mum and sister don't. So then they always say to us, why do they only listen to you? And we're like, I told you, it's the deep tone. It works. But I guess for my listeners as well, I briefly told you about this, that I do have a lot of single women that, listen to this podcast. I just wonder if there is something in relational speaking, as we've spoken about loosely, you've sort of mentioned that that's obviously important. If there's something they can do in conversations that kind of open their energy up a little bit, because as we're saying about taking up space and like all of those things, what would you kind of give advice to them in that respect?
I love where this is going already, and I appreciate the conversation, moving it into the one-to-one conversation versus the one-to-many. We talked about taking up space. We talked about using our voice from an embodied voice. If I was wanting to appear open, there's open and closed gesture. So it's how we use our body, right? Am I crossed? Are my legs crossed? Am I tilting myself to you so that you can't see all of me? Or am I showing myself open? Oftentimes, when I feel most vulnerable, I will force myself to put my hands up on my knees, face up, just to remind myself physiologically, I am safe. I am safe to be here. I'm born into this life. I am breathing air, the same air as everybody else. I have just as much right to be here. I am safe to be here. And by having an openness and demonstrating it physiologically within myself, it creates a psychological loop that bolsters my confidence. And even though I'm feeling vulnerable, maybe even sharing something vulnerable, I'm offering the space for someone to see me and witness me and feel more connected to me. So if I was single, I am single. If I was wanting to convey an openness to the person who I'm connecting with, I would definitely use the downward tone to appear authority. And I would also maybe tilt my head to show a little bit of curiosity and interest in the person. And I would keep my gestures open so that they feel that I'm willing to receive what they're saying and hear until that point is where I don't want to listen to what they're saying, or if they're too self-absorbed or whatever it is, because let's face it, that happens a lot. So then I might close up and start sending those signals that this isn't where I want to go. But there's a way to use the body in an open gesture, and that applies in the boardroom or in the coffee shop with your date.
Yeah, we weren't going to say bedroom because that takes it to a whole nother
Too
space.
far, too far, too far.
No, that's really, really interesting, and actually something that I've been pulled up on before when I've been on a date. And the date said to me, "Oh, you've got your arms crossed. Do you not want to be here?" And then I straight away was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That was a subconscious thing that I was doing." But again, that for me, which is interesting, is that maybe my body was saying, "This isn't the person," but I had to
Mm,
challenge myself, like you said before, when we feel uncomfortable, to be open, because without being open we don't get the full effect, because if we're shutting down even before we've got 5 minutes into the conversation, then we're kind of blocking our own blessings a little bit, aren't we? So that openness is so important. And I think a lot of women that I know have been through so much in their lives, just really hard things, that we naturally want to close off because that makes us feel safe. But the challenge is here is that if you don't open up, you have no space to receive. And I think that's a really important part that I want to just hone in on for anyone listening, because you get to have everything you want because you deserve it, but you have to open up to allow yourself to let it in. Otherwise, if you keep yourself closed, if you keep yourself small, if you keep yourself scurrying under your words and you're talking really fast, no one takes you seriously and you don't take yourself seriously. And that's really the core, I think, underneath it all, is that sense of worth. And when you do stand tall and you do own the space, people take you seriously as a result of just you're present, right? You're here. You're saying I am here instead of hiding from life. And I think so many women that I have conversations with are like, why is this not working? Why am I not receiving this? Why is it them that gets chosen? And I'm like, you're not allowing yourself to be seen. And I think that really is kind of the underlying tone of what we're both saying.
yeah, allowing yourself to be seen, and it is risky. And I think it becomes an opportunity to be intentional. And I would offer to anyone listening to practice this. Practice it in low stakes situations when you're ordering coffee or when you're getting like some little exchange with somebody, customer service. See if you can practice a sense of more openness than the situation requires, just to get a sense of how that feels, right? We're doing a rubber band stretch here, right? It's going to snap back, but it'll be a little bit bigger at the time. And I'll become more aware of, oh, I often touch my face. I often fix my hair. I often adjust my shirts or whatever I'm wearing, or I will close off. when I'm becoming more intentional about how I'm using my body in a space, it allows me to make choices in those moments where I want to, like you said, be open to receiving all the goodness that life has to bring me and I deserve, because we do. And we can't when we're closed off to it, whether we're sending that message to ourselves or to the other person. I want to call out one little thing you mentioned that you called out for crossing your arms. And it's so lovely when someone does bring awareness to how we are showing up in their world. Ask. Make an intention of asking one person every day, how are you perceiving me in this moment? And get that feedback. That outside appearance is going to help all of us construct a more intentional presence as we're moving forward. Like, oh, no, I was just cold, but I appreciate you calling out. Or, oh, yeah, I'm tired of hearing you talk and I'm done listening. Like, which is it? I'm not sure, but my body is telling me I'm over this conversation and I need to go. Um, yeah, it's a feedback loop. I love Maya Angelou says, I cannot see the back of my head. And so it's always good to get other people's perspective of how we are showing up in different spaces.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I always like to say to have an accountability buddy. You know, if you're saying to someone, look, I'm trying to evolve here in this space and I really want to be more aware of what I'm doing. So, yeah, have a friend or a family member say to you, like you just said there, and or this is where obviously mentorship comes in so handy, right? Or a coach, because then you have someone always there to say, yeah, you are doing this, or this is what's coming up for me. And yeah, definitely I'm guessing similar to what I do, you work through that as well with people exactly the same. So yeah, it's really, really important to have a mirror. I think how else are you going to know? Like you said, you can't see the back of your head. So, you know, we often can't see our blocks because we are in it. So that's where we are with it. And I'd love to know kind of on that conversation with, as you said previously about being introverted, did you notice yourself, you know, in your transition of this work and or even delivering the work, but living as a human? Have you noticed your own journey with this as well?
Definitely. I didn't realize I was introverted, or I didn't have a word for it. For a long time, my mother and my brother are both very extroverted. So I sort of just thought, okay. And my go-to was to make sure that I was surrounded by emotional support extroverts, right? I would, oh, I got to go to a party. I'm going to take this person with me because I know that they're going to facilitate all of that conversation. As I The second part of that I just want to own is that once I realized what introversion was and that I had it, I still had this sense of shame around it. Like it wasn't something that I was allowed to have. I need to show up in a different way. I need to perform. I need to be that person in the room in order to be seen as a leader, in order to get my message apart. I had to perform. And there was a moment where I gave myself permission to just be who I am. I think of presence as the combination of authenticity meets comfort. When I'm authentically myself and I'm comfortable in that space being myself, that's where presence begins to show up. And much of that was in learning how to work with how I naturally operate as an introvert in a space. I'm analytical, I'm observing, I'm absorbing, and I don't want to be the first one to speak. I want to take a moment to think about it. And learning that as an introvert, I need time to recover afterwards. I need a break from the small talk conversation. If it's three people in a row of just all small talk, I'm going to be worn down. I need to have a real question. So I have a list of questions that I ask to spark real conversations. And I do my best to avoid networking opportunities because I don't want them. So, do you associate as with more the introversion or the extroversion on your own?
I would say I'm an extroverted introvert. So I naturally present very extrovert. And if I'm in a room, I'm a Leo sun and Leo rising. So I'm like, hello, I'm here. And but then I burn quickly. So the fuse will go out. Like you said, I need to recalibrate and find space. But what you said was really interesting there about the deep conversations. I've noticed that over the years, I hate small talk. I hate it with a passion. And I'm that person that asks people quite straight, quite, at the beginning of a conversation, something really deep. And they're like, oh, wow, we're going there. And I'm like, I don't really know how to do the other. I can't do that. And if people only want to talk about surface level stuff, then I'm not the right person for them. And I think, um, that confuses a lot of people because obviously being so Leo and vibrant that people think I'm just going to be talking about fun things all the time. But I want to know why you do the thing that you do from the core reason, because I believe that purpose is something that our soul chose before we entered Earth, so I could take it on a whole journey. But I find when you're brave enough, like you said, to own who you are, the right
Mm.
people do vibrate around you. And I noticed that in events that I've met, really incredible women that just are like, next time I see them, they're like, oh my gosh, because they feel like we've built a genuine connection as opposed to just fluffy talk about anything. So yeah, I do like networking. It's something I really enjoy, but equally I know that after I've socialized, I get to a certain point and I'm like, I tap out. Even at family events, like, people will know that I've fused out and I'm just sitting in a room eating on my own because I just need some space. So I do think it's really powerful that you bring that up, because I think it's important that you understand your own patterns. As we said, self-awareness is the key.
Yeah, and it's okay to just go in the corner and eat too. My God, family gatherings can be exhausting because we have these guardrails that we have to stay within. We can't talk about this, we can't talk about that. And it can be very exhausting to stay within a little box and show up in a very little way and not feel free to just be fully myself in that situation.
Mm.
Um,
And I definitely did that too
to your
before,
point,
like.
when I started like owning who I am, I did start gravitationally pulling in people that are more like-minded. What I didn't anticipate was the time, the transition time, the
Mm.
people leaving my life that needed to leave, right? I've gotten in the habit now of, when I start my day, I set my intentions. This is what I expect to. And then I'm going to experience kindness today. I'm going to experience genuine connection. I'm going to experience a sense of hopefulness. And then when I run into somebody and I get some other blast, I'm like, my day isn't done. And this is an opportunity to keep refining where I am heading in my life. And I bless that person and thank them for like bringing that little spark of like contrast and helping me become more clear about what it is that I want to create. But allowing myself to know that, okay, well, a better example is when I'm dealing with a challenge, especially customer service of some sort on the phone, and things aren't getting resolved, I'm like, it's okay. Tomorrow, this is going to be a better day. I don't know. Maybe it's because I want things to always be in a neat little box by the end of the day. Allowing those people to dissipate from my life naturally, organically, um, was not as easy as I anticipated it would be. I'll say that.
No, I agree with you. I had the same experience myself with, I mean, I would say it was uncomfortable, definitely uncomfortable, but equally I believe that everyone that kind of fell off the tree with a, I don't want to say the rotten apples, that's unfair, but they'd expired in my life. And I think that this is why choosing yourself and choosing to take up space is so important, because you can't sacrifice your growth for someone else's. And I think so many women have been taught this martyrdom thing where, we're drowning ourselves and then we're trying to save everyone, but all that's doing is just pulling us down lower and lower. And it's like, it's actually okay to swim to the shore first and like build a raft and then go out and save people. That's what you want to do. But equally, it's not our responsibility to save anyone. And I think when we start to evolve into a more embodied version of ourselves that is taking up space, it is definitely the right people find you and all of that good stuff. I can't remember what our point was going to be now. It's just falling out of my head. But yeah, no, I don't know where I was trying to go with that. I was envisioning the raft still, and I was like, where was I going with that version of you? It might come back to me. I just
It
went up.
might. There's an idea that surfaced around comfort with discomfort, right? How can I
Mm,
There was, for 3 years, my challenge to myself was to speak before it feels comfortable because I
mm,
neatly wanted to stop and process what was happening. But like getting comfort or comfortable with speaking before it feels comfortable, it's not easy. And there's something to what you were saying about like being a little bit uncomfortable with other people's unease. Like, it's not my job to make you happy. It's not my job to rescue
Mm.
you. And I'm going to prioritize myself over your happiness. And I want for you to be happy, but I'm not going to make it my job. I'm not going to make it my responsibility. So I have to learn to be comfortable with the discomfort that you are sitting in and the boundaries I have between where my responsibility lies and within that.
Yeah, absolutely that. And even more so is like when you do let go of people, it's that understanding that I want you to eat still, just not at the table with me. So we're letting people go with love rather than, resentment or hate. Because as you said, like every day you're having those conversations and accepting the parts that, that was uncomfortable. I don't really want to go through that again. But equally, I feel like there was something learned there, and the next time it will be different. And I think for people that are introverted, confrontation is a real big blocker. And people are so afraid of it that they make themselves smaller as a result. And it's really funny because I'm in a group of three with my best friends, and two of us are quite naturally confrontational just because we are, and the other one is very introverted and not confrontational. And something funny has happened recently where she's just come out of her shell and she's just calling things out. And she said, "That's you two, that's your influence on me, that I'm now speaking up for the things that are important to me." And we're both like, finally, yes, I'm glad that you're doing that now. And it's just a real beautiful thing. And they do say that you become like the five people you spend the most time with. So, your vibe attracts your tribe. So this is why it's so important that you do take up space and you don't make yourself small, because as a result of you being bigger, brighter, and more unapologetic, you're going to meet people that also amplify you and mirror back that same energy, which is just, I guess, that gold dust in all of it. And on this kind of space where we're talking about our own sort of patterns and, yeah, I guess behavior types, it's not quite behavior types, but you know what I mean. This comes to the question, obviously, when was the moment you gave yourself the permission to shine? That can be a number of moments, but I feel like it ties in with this right now.
A moment that I gave myself permission to shine. And we talked before we started recording that the question was amplified in my mind. Like, how do I answer this question correctly? And I would say that's the answer. The moment I gave myself permission to shine was when I gave myself permission to say what I didn't think was the right answer. I
Mm,
was I was leading a training at a tech firm in the Bay Area, and I was teaching the idea of like strategies to overcome the fear of public speaking. And somebody asked a question, and rather than giving that person what I thought would be the right answer for that, I gave my truth. I gave a truth response. And I just got goosebumps. The energy in the room shifted. People leaned in. And I was like, whoa, there's something, I'm getting full body goosebumps right now. There was something that happened in that moment where what I was teaching to overcome the fear of public speaking is to simply not make it about me, but to make it about the message and the person. And in that moment where I just spoke my truth for the first time, seemingly, and while I was doing my job of training, it was opening. It was heart opening. It shifted the room, and it changed the trajectory of my coaching career. And instead of teaching people simply the techniques and strategies, I began like unearthing what's driving your ability to show up? What are the past experiences or the beliefs that you've built that create the foundation of how you show up in the moment? And let's work with those. Let's reframe, let's reimagine, let's create new strategies to build on top of that to let your authenticity flow. All because of that one
yes.
moment.
I love that so much. And for me, like as soon as you said those words, soulmate strategy came into my head about what you were speaking about there, because it was all of the education stuff that we know is so important will only take you so far until you integrate it with every part of your body. And then I think in that moment you gave yourself the permission to shine was where you gave your soul the permission to speak for you. And that for me, I feel like is always the connection point. I actually, to much contrary, I mean, you might actually have a go at me at this, but when I do public speaking, I don't have I don't really over rehearse. I don't even prep a speech most of the time. I just have some key points I want to talk about, and I allow my soul to lead the conversation. And that's really for me where I always get told that I've left a lasting impact on people and all these lovely things, because my story of, you know, my journey so far and childhood experiences and all that stuff has been so difficult that I feel like if I over intellectualize it, it takes away the grit and the raw transformation of what that feels like. And I want to take my listeners on that journey, and I want them to feel that sense of, if I can do it, so can you. And I feel like that loses a little bit of flair when you try to over choreograph it, you know. And I was a professional dancer for 11 years, so that obviously feels like it's part of that story. But equally, the embodiment piece ties into all of that too, because I always show up as this version of me. So whether I'm on stage, whether I'm in the supermarket, I'm always this version of me. And I think for me, that's the biggest declaration of taking up space, is that you don't get a different version of Cherie. She's always here, this version.
It's amazing, and I celebrate you in that. And I'm hearing the contrast between you and me in the sense that I don't overly choreograph, which I like that term, but I do want to be prepared. Like I'm an introvert. I want to be prepared for the situation.
Mm,
So I come not with a speech, but I come with bullet points. I come with ideas. I come with fully formed thoughts around the topic that I plan to hopefully drop in at some point. The it's a wonderful synergy between the two of us because here I am coming with prepared talking points to share with your beautiful audience, and you're like flowing and easygoing, and the dance that we're having at the moment is embodied of like what becomes possible when
mm.
we allow ourselves to be fully who we are, relying on whatever it is that drives us to show up in that moment fully. Um, I wish I could say that I always bring 100% of myself to every situation. And I still believe that, you know, when it comes to a professional setting, I want the professional version of that person meeting me there too. Like, I don't always want to have the full authenticity of that person. I still want to show up and do the work. And I think that as a humankind, as a society, we are moving towards merging that. COVID forced us to find a new perspective of what does it mean to be who I am and work, because now my work is in my home. I'm calling in from work from home to go to work, and it became this blurred line, and I think we're still navigating how much of like my personal life can I bring into my professional life, and what's the authentic chord between the two of them. And I think that's what you're referring to. Your
Yeah.
authentic chord is showing up in both of those situations.
Yeah, but I think as well, like I haven't come from the corporate space. So I feel like when you've been in that industry for so long, there is that dance you have to do between too much personal life, too much work life, you know, and find that balance. So, and also, like you said, we're talking about I'm a natural extrovert, you're a natural introvert. So we're working with what works for us. And I think that's the important thing that we want to highlight, right? Is that there's no right way of doing it. It's just what feels best for you. And equally, if you're listening to this thinking that you're naturally more introvert and you want to be more extrovert, it's like we're trying to give you some tools to help you tap into that part that feels good for you. But I really do agree with you on when you're talking about this dance that we've been doing since COVID, and that trying to show up authentically. And I do think that there gets to be a baseline of what that looks like across the board. And it's just that the version of you that shows up at work is your kind of everyday going to the supermarket version of you. But equally, if you go on a night out with friends, that's you dialed all the way up, right? That's you at max capacity. But at the baseline, it's just you're always this open person that is, you know, receptive and eager to learn and or share. And then obviously the lower end of that is that you're in your room reading a book, turned all the way down. It's just you. So I think that if we look at it like a dial, I think then we get that full flexibility to give ourselves permission to be every version of us in that space. And I think yeah, I would definitely say that's my very Leo nature that allows me to be all of those things at once. But equally, I again, because I am so open, I can say to people and feel comfortable to say, I just need some time to myself. Like, especially with my nieces, they're at that age where they want to climb all over me all the time and like pull my ear off and all the stuff. And I have to just say to them, I need space now. You've got to leave me alone for a minute and then I'll come back. So, but again, vocalizing how we feel has to be, it has to be there, right? It's the most important thing that we could do for ourselves ever. Um, there's so much I could talk to you more on, and I love every part of this, but I feel like at this point it's really good for the listeners to hear more about how you're working at the moment, and if they want to find you anywhere, where would be the best space for them to find you?
Well, thank you. Yeah, if anything that I've said resonates with you, I would invite you to go to clearandcompellingplaybook.com. It's my book. I'm compressing 20 years of communication coaching into a book. And if you go to clearandcompellingplaybook.com, there is a free resource on agency to relational behaviors. You can download that list and you can check where you're showing up each time. I would also welcome any connection through LinkedIn. One of the things that I love is if you have a video of yourself speaking, whether it's giving a talk or whatever, I would love to review that with you and look for what are the keynotes that would elevate your performance. What are the things that maybe you're not seeing that you could easily communicate more effectively and more influentially out there. But yes, please reach out to me.
And I love that offer there about sending the video. Like that's gold. And also the fact that you're sending, well, you have the option to get the free resource of seeing where you sit on that spectrum. That's going to be so helpful, especially as well. I want to say if you're not a professional woman, as in like you're not a business owner or in the corporate world, that's still going to apply to you in your everyday life. So definitely take up that offer because like we said, self-awareness is the key. So when we can identify where we are sitting on that spectrum, that gives us our power, right? We're not giving it away anymore. We're saying, this is mine. I sit here right now, I'd like to be here, so what can I do to tweak that? And yeah, we are both available for questions in the DMs for sure. I will pop all the links in the show notes, so you can just click below as well for anyone listening right now. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like we'll have to come back to it again at another time. I feel like at the end of every episode, I always do a soul to soul message. So based on the conversation, what would you like to share with the listeners? What do you feel like someone needs to hear right now?
Ask for what you need. Every day, stretch yourself to speak before it feels comfortable and ask for what you need. Keep trying it on.
Yes, I love that so much because people are not mind readers. So there we go. Got ask and you shall receive. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Again,
Thank
all of
you.
your links will be in the show notes, and yeah, have a really lovely week.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please do comment as well what you feel like you've learned from the episode. It's really helpful. And if you can rate it on a 5-star review, I would be so grateful because that just means that more women get access to these teachings within the episodes. And also, who would you like to be on the show? DM me and let me know. And please do share with a friend that you know needs to hear what's in this episode today. I would also love to invite you into my Inner Power portal because that is the space where all of my meditations are, all of my activations, and I host 2 live sessions per month that do include movement and my spiritual downloads and all the beautiful things that I offer all in one space. Plus you get to ask me any questions that you have. So I'd love to see you in there. Have a great week.